Hey guys, weeaboonewz here, and today I'll be discussing the Danganronpa Kill Cure fan project and giving my theories and predictions for each character. If you don't know what Danganronpa Kill Cure is, it's basically a very ambitious Danganronpa web series being created by the user Moboxer here on YouTube. If you're interested in knowing more, I really urge you to go ahead and check out his channel and the trailer he has for it. Or you can also watch my last video I made on this series where I gave a general overview about it. As for this video, very similarly to what I did for V3, I'm going to be going through each character's bio that has been released, along with their report cards, and give my opinion on each character, mixed with some thoughts and theories I have for them. All of this information has been taken from Moboxer's Twitter or Tumblr, so I'll be sure to link those down below if you would like to read them on your own. Please keep in mind this video is entirely speculation, much like my V3 one. I did my best to analyze each and every character, but with very little info. I'm guessing on a lot of this. Also, please remember that this is in fact a fan project. I know we're all really excited about it, but it's always best to kind of keep our expectations in check while looking forward to projects like this. I just wanted to mention this because I noticed Moboxer had made a video on it, and I just wanted to make sure that this video isn't encouraging people to put more pressure on him and the team or anything like that. But without further ado, let's go ahead and get right into the video. So the first character I want to talk about is Kokoro Saru, who is the Monokuma-like character of this game. His description reads that he is an AI-controlled monkey that monitors the killing game. He identifies himself as the ultimate counselor. At first impression, Kokoro Saru is a kind and loving monkey that claims he doesn't want anybody to have to play the killing game, providing motives to even deter participants from doing so. However, whenever somebody decides to kill anyways, due to some unfortunate event, he temporarily transforms into an aggressive and twisted form. So like I mentioned in my last video on this series, I'm really interested in the idea of virtue versus vice and how they're going to incorporate this theme using his character. It mentions that he only turns evil after a murder occurs, and that before this he actually gives them motives to not kill each other instead. And I mentioned last time that I think this could mean that some of the characters might have some very bad morals, and if this is the case, it could be a really interesting way to emphasize the themes of virtue versus vice. And I found this idea to be particularly interesting because when I personally think about killers who killed in Danganronpa without the inspiration of a motive, I think of somebody like Korekiyo who was just absolutely bonkers. So as I mentioned, I was basically thinking that certain characters could represent the themes of vice, while others are attributed to virtue. However, in the last video, I realized I didn't pay enough attention to the italicized unfortunate event part of the description. I feel like this could imply that the mastermind of this game, instead of using Kokoro Saru to give incentives to the students publicly, might actually try to incentivize them through other means. For example, they might try to instigate explosive situations to raise tension among the group. Regardless of whether or not this is true though, I still do think there will be varying morality among the group, since you can't cause conflict unless there's something kind of like already off. And either way, I think it'll be interesting to see how the students will respond to the murders, since they won't be able to pin the blame on Kokoro Saru like the characters in Danganronpa were always so quick to do to Monokuma. Overall, I just find the whole setup to be really interesting. But now let's go ahead and talk about the students. The first student I'm going to talk about is Hiroki Mizuki, who seems to be the protagonist of this game. His talent is the ultimate apprentice. His description reads that he's the apprentice to his father, the headmaster of Birakukawa Academy, and that it's said by talent scouts that Hiroki has unparalleled learning capabilities. However, due to suffering memory loss upon being forced into the killing game, his aptitude has seemingly left him as well. His personality can be described as earnest, but sometimes prying, as he wishes to understand every little thing around him to keep himself comfortable. On his character sheet, it mentions that he likes augmented reality, and for those of you guys who don't know, augmented reality is basically like having virtual objects or characters or things like that placed into reality, kind of like Pokemon Go basically. As for noise pollution, it's basically harmful or annoying levels of noise, commonly from things like airplanes or industry, etc. Firstly, I'm glad to see they kept the tradition alive and gave the main character Nahoge. I feel like it would just be wrong to have a protagonist without one at this point. The main thing I find interesting about his character though is that he has a connection with the headmaster of the academy, as well as having a massive lack of memory. And I'm sure all the students lost their memory somewhat since they're being put in this killing game, but his is emphasized and it seems to connect with his talent. Basically, I have a theory about this. I think there's a chance that the reason his memory was erased is due to either being connected to the mastermind or being the mastermind like unknowingly himself. A reason for believing this is because he's the only one who's lost some of his talent abilities along with his regular memory, and I feel like the reason he forgot part of his memory could be because the mastermind doesn't want him to remember some of the really important aspects of his apprenticeship with his father. Like for example, maybe him and his father were working to create the killing game, but Hiroki last minute decided that he didn't want to work on it anymore and maybe he was going to expose it to the world or something like that, and so his father decided to erase his memory and then put him in the killing game. Of course, this is just like entirely speculation on my part, but I think this idea would fit really well with the themes of virtue and vice because is if he's basically like slowly recovering more and more questionable memories of himself from the past, he might come to question his own morality and whether or not he's truly virtue or vice. As for status, I'm predicting that he'll die. We never had a protagonist make it to the end and then die. Rest in peace, Kaede. So I think it'd be an interesting idea to try out. And for example, if my theory is correct, maybe he decides to sacrifice himself in order to save the remaining survivors as a way to compensate for his wrongdoings in the past. And this could also set the stage for vice can become virtuous as an ending theme or something kind of like that. The next character I want to talk about is Buu Sachi. His talent is the ultimate yoga guru, and his description reads, sympathetic and soft-spoken, this personal trainer has the tendency to offer a little more assistance than required. Buu is constantly concerned of the well-being of others, yielding an altruistic personality that worries his peers. He is a young man that truly enjoys life and wishes others to share the same notion as him, commonly seen performing mudra, and implores others to join him to eliminate any tension in the room. He's a health nut at the core, but doesn't mind treating himself occasionally. His likes are mudra, which for those of you guys who don't know, is a movement or pose in yoga with your hands that you can do, and is also described as a symbolic hand gesture used in Hindu and Buddhist ceremonies, in statuary, and in Indian dance. And his dislikes are an unmet agenda. His personality, just based off of his description, seems to be related a lot more to the virtue side of things, considering how it's emphasized that he really does care about the well-being of the others and wants them to be as happy as him. But I've also been trying to speculate why he might be practicing mudra so much or why he enjoys yoga so much as well. It seems like from what I read online, a lot of people do yoga and mudra for health reasons. So I've been thinking that maybe one of his parents died young or somebody he knew and really cared about might have died young. And so he kind of took on yoga for health benefits, but then just got really into it. And based off of his description too, it seems like he's a person that really tries to enjoy life in the moment. So I could see like a deceased parent or somebody really close to him kind of influencing him to live life to the fullest every moment. But overall, I really don't have too much to say about him. He's probably one of the characters I have like the least to say about, honestly. I do think he'll be a pretty good guy, and based off of just what I know about him, I'm gonna label him as a victim. Next on the list is Sakuma Konishi, and she is the ultimate extreme couponer. Her description reads, unpredictable in nature and regularly inebriated on caffeine, this crazy couponer is an insuppressible ball of fun. Sakuma has an aggressive playfulness about her that makes her both hard to love and difficult to hate. From jumping on her peers' backs for piggyback rides to challenging them to boxing fights, she never seems to be out of energy. She's not particularly helpful with anything unless she's receiving something in return. When Sakuma does her own thing, it's best to just let her for your own safety. Or not. I honestly love her already. She seems hysterical, not to mention her design is really different and refreshing. I also just want to take a moment so that you guys can appreciate the fact that she has a mug that says Best Girl on it. I'd really honestly love it if she just like went around calling herself that. But on a more serious note, in her character sheet, it states that she likes caffeine and dislikes capitalism. I sort of speculate that the reason for her dislike could be that she grew up poor in an area where she may have felt it was hard to succeed. If she came from a poor area as well, it might make sense as to why she became so good at couponing. I feel like as a child, she could have taken up this hobby as a way to help support her family and help them afford food better since she wasn't old enough to work yet, and that eventually she just became like amazing at it and became really passionate about it. As for her role in the killing game, I could see her being more on the vice side of things, since it states that she's not often helpful unless she receives something back. This description just kind of makes it seem as if she's a bit selfish. I've been really torn on the idea of her being a victim or a killer. I lean more towards her being a killer though. Her being so over the top and high energy normally makes me wonder how she would act if she was really emotional or scared, and if she still is incredibly high energy and overbearing in those types of situations. I could see her being reckless to the point of killing someone, either on accident or purposeful, in order to escape. Next on the list is Fanfan Long, and she is the ultimate human subject and is one of the foreign students in Nakagawa's class. Moboxer stated that she is Chinese. Her description describes her as a cheery and kind soul who has trouble saying no to others, and the poor thing is often taken advantage of for it. Fanfan's body has developed strange physical effects by cause of various chemicals she's tested in the past. However, it's stated that she doesn't particularly mind them at all. With a massive appetite and a cast iron stomach, Fanfan will eat everything in sight without pause, and when under the effects of a sugar rush, she is difficult to control. Her likes are hot flakes, and her dislikes are bitter medicine. And for those of you guys who don't know what hot flakes are, they're basically like a Chinese sweet. So far, she's probably one of the characters I'm the most interested in. I feel like she's going to have a really depressing backstory though, considering she's a literal test subject. Although she seems much more bubbly and happy than Mikan, I sort of expect her to be a bit similar in the way that she's very easy to manipulate and be taken advantage of. Another thing that I find really interesting about her is how her backstory correlates with her design so well. Just by looking at her, you can see that her skin is discolored, making her look quite sickly. She also seems to have a flower growing out of her head. She wears glasses on one of her sprites, implying poor eyesight. And there's more than likely something messed up regarding her left arm, since she seems to be hiding it in almost every position shown so far. I wonder if whatever happened to her left arm is a side effect that she is really bothered by. And if so, I feel like exploring the incident that caused it could be a great way to learn more about these experiments and her personality. I also sort of wonder if her being so short is another side effect of the experiments, like maybe they stunted her growth. Same thing with her insanely large appetite. I find the idea of her living through the whole game to be a bit doubtful, sadly, and I could see her being a victim or a killer really, depending on what direction they want to take with her character. Personally, I do kind of like the idea that the amount of abuse that she's received has kind of piled up on her emotionally to the point that she can't take it anymore and then decides to kill. But just based off of her bio, I find that idea to be a bit of a stretch at the moment, so I'm going to label her as a victim for the time being. The next character is Hideo Sacco, the ultimate theorist. Her description reads that she is a glacial lass who is leery of others and has the tendency to make curt remarks when she is aggravated. Hide is confident in her talent, however, she will give others the opportunity to challenge her hypotheses, letting what happens next speak for itself. Hide's mistrust towards the other students often causes her to become a target of suspicion herself. She gazes at people from a distance and is branded a stalker because of it. With a prideful aura, Hide absolutely despises being wrong. Also, they point out that as you can see in the sketches, Hide's outfit was once very different. Her likes are lucid dreaming and her dislikes are political intrigue. Just based off of her description and appearance, she reminds me so much of Kirigiri. I feel that it's pretty likely she'll be the female lead in this series, since she and the main character were the only ones on the promotional art that didn't have reused sprites. I'm also really interested to know why she seems to be so insecure about being wrong to the point of extreme bitterness and hostility. It makes me wonder if she came from perfectionist parents or something along those lines. As for her role, like I said, she reminds me a lot of Kirigiri, so that's kind of why I've been leaning towards her playing a similar part in the game as Kirigiri did. But I think her and the main character will bump heads quite a bit as well. I could see her becoming really upset with him in a situation where they both have different views of who the culprit could be, but then she turns out to be wrong, and I feel like for a short time she'd lash out and or ignore the main character for the shame she feels, but eventually would come to her senses, and then we could see some character growth and learn why she has this flaw in the first place. I also have like a second theory as well. We don't really have a character that's established as being like a Tagami or a Kamaida or an Oma, basically like a rival to the protagonist either, and there isn't really another character outlined on the promotional art either, so I'm kind of wondering if she'll double as a Kirigiri type of character and a sort of rival character at the same time, since like I said, I could really see her bumping heads with the main character, and if this is the case, I would definitely see her being more so somebody like Tagami rather than like Oma or Kamaida. She doesn't give me like crazy vibes at all. She just kind of seems to be rather aggressive. But like everything else, this is just like total speculation on my part. I also see her as being a survivor, or at least making it very far into the game, but I lean towards her being a survivor. Next on the list is Akina Miki, and he is the ultimate angler. His description reads, this fisher can be described as unpleasantly reserved, collecting his thoughts for a moderate period of time before speaking. He appears inattentive at times, however, he often notices obscure details that everyone else misses, albeit looking over the blatantly obvious ones. Iki claims he had lost his left arm out on the open sea, but procrastinates shedding the details for the sake of suspense. He isn't particularly chatty about anything other than shonen anime. His likes are shonen anime and his dislikes are attention. I feel like he's a kid who has 8th grade syndrome and takes himself like way too seriously. I also feel like he could end up having a hero complex similarly to Kaido in V3, in the sense that his 8th grade syndrome is deeply connected to his personality, rather than it just being like a source of comic relief as it is for most characters. My reason for believing this is because he does seem to be rather serious, other than his love for shonen anime, and since it states that he dislikes attention, I wonder if this connects as to why he doesn't reveal the reason for him losing his arm as well. I speculate that the event was really shameful for him, an event that made him feel as if he'll never be as great as the shonen heroes he looks up to, or something along those lines. As for his role in the killing game, I could honestly see him being a survivor. I feel like he has good potential for an arc, seeming as he's so like kind of reclusive into himself himself. I could see the events of the killing game kind of bringing him to become closer with the group and Hiroki, and learning how to open up and kind of overcome his insecurities and maybe become the hero that he wants to be. But that's pretty much all my opinions regarding him at the moment. Next is Kunitaro Higa, or DJ Shaved Ice, and he is the ultimate pawnbroker. His description reads that Kunitaro dons a hip and nonchalant persona, and he makes that clear while he blathers on about how much cooler vintage technology was compared to newfangled garbage, as he calls it. He lives in his own little world and often gets lost in nostalgia and leaves other youth around him discombobulated. And having lived his childhood through hand-me-downs, Kunitaro has learned to appreciate the old school. His likes are old school hip-hop and his dislikes are touchscreen. Although I feel like pawnbrokers generally do get a bad reputation, I do think that he'll end up being a good guy. He just seems so hilarious and like a bit socially awkward, honestly. Mostly I kind of feel like he'll be there for comedic relief, and that he'll be outcast from the group a bit because of his oddball personality. I feel like he's almost gonna act like an old man stuck in a teenager's body that is trying really hard to seem hip and cool to the youth. The idea of him rapping about how awful iPhones are just seems really hilarious to me. And since he grew up mostly wearing hand-me-downs as well, it makes me wonder if he came from a fairly poor upbringing too. And I also wonder if he'll randomly have moments of wisdom, since he probably does usually hang around older people, as it seems like he wouldn't really fit in with people his age. I'd love it if he did have wise moments while maintaining his humor aspect, maybe similar to a character like Iroh from Avatar, but just kind of younger and more hip-hoppy. At first I was kind of leaning towards him more so being a victim, but on second thought I kind of think he'll be a survivor, just because I feel like a comic relief character making it to the end is pretty common in Danganronpa games, and it's sort of nice as well because it's good to kind of have a character stay around that sort of livens up things when everybody starts dying. The next student is Monzo Shibu, and he is the ultimate stuntman. His description reads that he's fun-loving and full of heart. He takes the heart of his fans in the best way he knows how, which is hurting himself through wild capers. Believing himself to be a celebrity as a stunt double, Monzo often puffs himself up bigger than he actually is. When an idea for a personal stunt pops up, he'll do whatever it takes to accomplish it, and the danger behind is just an afterthought. Unfortunately, very little does he learn a lesson when a bone or two is broken. If it entertains them, Monzo's the man who wants to get it done. His likes are parkour, and his dislikes are being called dork. His design sort of makes me think of like an older version of Masaru from Ultra Despair Girls. Also kind of Kyle from South Park because of that one laughing sprite that he has. That's very South Park-esque. His personality and design also remind me of Leon, so I basically feel the same way about him that I felt about Kaido before playing V3, which is I kind of feel like he has the most potential of being the first killer since he seems to be very reckless. I know I was horrendously wrong about Kaido when I made that video, but I'm trying out the theory again, and it'll totally be right this time, guys, I promise. Probably. I do find it interesting that it mentions how he tries to make himself sound bigger than he actually is. Makes me wonder if he has some self-esteem issues and has to puff himself up in order to convince himself and others of his worth or something like that. I also really love the smiley face design on his helmet. It kind of reminds me of Ryoma's smiley face buttons. But yeah, that's pretty much all I have to say about him for right now. Next is Maru Yokokume, and she is the ultimate activist. Her description mentions that she is this for all the wrong reasons, probably. She's spunky, flirty, and isn't as astute as she believes she is. Maru often plays the devil's advocate, debating on topics she doesn't care for, nor has any prior knowledge in. Equipped with her trusty megaphone, she takes every opportunity to get her message across. She's an attention seeker and a rebel at her finest. Her likes are social media, and her dislikes are losing tan. I'm not really 100% sure what to think of her, but I do feel like overall she'll probably be one of the characters that represents themes of vice and immorality more than virtue, since she's taking advantage of activism, which is used by people that are generally really passionate about improving the world, and is instead using it for her own personal gain. One of her audition lines from the casting call is, "I want to be known for being a hot bombshell, not for some splashy soapboxing," implying she really doesn't care about activism whatsoever. She also mentions that she holds the Ultra Despair Girls edition megaphone in another line, and I thought this was a pretty cool reference. She also kind of has a drooling sprite that reminds me of Miyu, and I feel like she'll be kind of unstable just like Miyu. And even though I could see her being willing enough to kill in order to escape the killing game, based off of her lines from the casting call, she doesn't seem to be the brightest to me. Because of this, I don't really feel like she would think out her murder plan all that well, and I can more so see her trying to pull off a murder but ending up the victim instead, kind of like what happened with Sayaka. Next is Momo Soga, and she is the Soaring Lass, or the ultimate local hero. Her description states that Momo prides herself in performing the most dangerous heroics, such as saving cats from trees and helping school children cross the street. Contrary contrary to what most people assume, she doesn't agree with combative solutions. When role-playing as Soaring Lass, she can put on a brave face for a time, but easily falls out of character when one of her several phobias is triggered. And yes, she only wears spandex, nothing else. Her likes are spandex, and her dislikes are violence. Although I didn't mention her in the last video at all, I really do think she has the potential to be my best girl. I don't know, she's just so pure. I'm not really super interested in her the way I am in other characters. Like, I don't really know that her background will be all that deep like I think fans will be. And she's not like mysterious to me at all like Hide or Naomi, but she's just like so pure. I just want to protect her from the killing game at all costs. I felt the same way about Kiba when I first read his character description too. Also, her design when she's not wearing her helmet is just so cute. I definitely see her as being a good source of comic relief with the overall irony around her character, being a hero who's afraid of so many things, but I also most definitely think she'll die. Overall, I do see her more so being a victim rather than a killer, although I do think the idea of her being a killer would be interesting because it'd be incredibly ironic to have a literal hero end up as a killer, and this could be a cool device to use if they wanted to spin the virtue versus vice theme on its head, having someone so virtuous commit something so incredibly immoral. But there's a character coming up that I actually think would represent that idea better, so I'm gonna save that theory for them, and just based off of what I know about her character, I just don't really see it happening unless it's like an accident, and I'm a bit skeptical of that idea too. Next is Naomi Dawn. She is one of the other foreign students as well, and she is Nigerian. She's described as a stoic and a stickler for details. She's the ultimate architect and one of the 3 foreign ultimate students in her class. She has the habit of making sarcastic remarks just to humor herself, but they aren't easily identified thanks to her impassive personality. She means well even if she doesn't seem all that inclined, and often fiddles with pencils to keep herself relaxed. Also, it mentions on here that she was originally the ultimate social worker, but props to Rosebro297, her talent was changed to ultimate architect. Her likes are ASMR, and her dislikes are termites. I honestly love her design. It reminds me a lot of the scrapped Junko design that they had for Ultra Despair Girls, and I know this game is supposed to be unconnected to Hope's Peak and all that, but I am a little bit sketched out that she does sort of resemble this design. And if there was a character to cross universes in order to kill high school students, it would definitely be Junko. Other than that though, she does give me Kirigiri vibes as well, very similarly to Hide. When I actually first saw her design, I assumed that she would be the Kirigiri character, and it wasn't until I saw Hide's and like the promotional art that I changed my mind on that. So I am really interested to see kind of what they do with her character. And like I said, since I kind of have a small theory about Hide being the rival character because of her more aggressive personality, I think it would be interesting if more so Naomi was the Kirigiri character, but I do know that idea is a bit of a stretch. So as for right now, I'm just gonna label her as a victim. But since she does seem to be rather bright, I do have a feeling that she'll live fairly long, or at least I hope she does. And on like a more memey note, speaking of her design, even though I love it, I do find it hilarious that she's wearing Crocs. The next student is Oniji Itagaki, and he is the ultimate tailor. He's described as smarmy and hot-headed with a winning personality to boot. Oniji makes it his business to be surrounded by people who look like 100 million yen, even going as far as offering to fix them up nice apparel for free. He never hesitates to criticize others' attire, but can be highly insecure when given criticism himself. With a narcissistic view on life, Oniji believes good looks, good cars, and good company make a true man. His likes are zoot suits and his dislikes are cheap fabric. At first, I was feeling like major rich asshole Tagami vibes, but it does also seem like he is incredibly insecure considering his bio mentions how bad he is at accepting criticism. The fact that 2 out of 4 of his sprites seem timid also gives me the impression that he's going to be a lot more self-conscious than I might have originally thought. His insecurities more than likely come from his appearance, so I think he probably does have good intentions when trying to help others improve theirs, but I have a feeling he'll probably come off as an ass about it. Other than that though, I can really see him butting heads and or at least having some fun banter with Kunitaro, since I'm sure he'll be dying to give him a fashion makeover since all of his clothes are hand-me-downs, and I severely doubt that Kunitaro will want to accept it. I'm also interested to see how he might get along with Chikuma too. I could see it going both ways, like either they don't get along because she prefers cheap deals on clothes, or she'll see his apparel offer as a great saving opportunity. If it's the second option, I could honestly see them being in like a one-sided romance, with her more so wanting to be with him just so she can get free stuff. Almost like a sugar daddy situation. I severely doubt that's right, but I honestly think the idea would be hilarious. Overall, I lean towards him being a killer, just because he does kind of seem to have a narcissistic and confrontational part about him, but like I said, he also has kind of like a timid side. And he just seems like a really good combination to make a killer that is both like intimidating, but also someone that you can really sympathize with. so I lean towards that idea for him. Next up is Shiori Nakagawa, the former ultimate instructor and an alumna of Bidokukawa Academy. She's a kind, doting teacher who cares for the well-being of her students, although she can be blindly optimistic regarding them. Having graduated from the academy, Shiori has learned the values of virtue, believing ultimate students to be the true future the world needs to change. She fears that she may be viewed as a pedagogue by her students, so she often lets misbehavior slide, for a time. Her likes are romanticism and her dislikes are meat. I don't know why, but I've already convinced myself that she's like insane and going to be a killer or related to the mastermind. Something about her is just so suspicious to me. I guess like the first main red flag to me is that she's an alumni of the academy, and since I think the main character's dad could be connected to the killing game, I just really feel like there's a chance that she might know more than she's letting on. Secondly, the line about how she learned the values of virtue from this quote-unquote great academy makes me feel like she would be a better character than Momo to flip the theme of virtue versus vice on its head. Like a character who learned all about virtue who turns out to be vice. The whole idea about her thinking ultimates are the true future, I think could end up with her believing that the current ultimates are tainted, and maybe that's why this death game was made, to get rid of the immoral ultimates that she and the others from Bidokukawa Academy don't want. And regarding the unfortunate event line from Kokoro Saru's bio, I feel like she could potentially be the person who causes the quote-unquote unfortunate events that lead to murder. Like maybe she's the true giver of incentives. And then just the line about how she lets misbehavior slide for a time kind of like sketches me out too. Like maybe if she is just a killer, she's like really cool with everybody and lets them walk all over her and do all this immoral bad stuff that she doesn't agree with. But then over time it piles up until she just can't handle a certain student anymore and feels the need to like take them out or something. I don't know, like I said, I've totally convinced myself of this for almost no reason. And this is like completely speculation on my part, but I just find her bio to be like really suspicious. So yeah, I'm gonna label her as a killer. The next student is Shoko Tiki, and he is the ultimate forum admin. To say Shoko has a short fuse is an understatement. With a zero tolerance policy against tomfoolery, he often expresses his loathing for it in an unquenchable wrath. If he isn't cursing at the top of his lungs in fits of rage, he's making a mockery of those who share nonsensical assertions. Surprisingly though, he is rather humble when it comes to his own talent. His likes are card games and his dislikes are braggers. He seems like super duper tsundere, honestly. I usually do like tsunderes a lot, so I feel like I'll really like him. He also has this line too about chicken nuggets that's just like freaking hilarious. I'll play it for you guys really quickly.
I don't eat them because they're shaped like dinosaurs. I eat them because they're fucking chicken nuggets!
I feel like he'll definitely butt heads with the majority of the cast at the beginning, but I could also see him getting an arc where he's eventually able to tone down his abrasiveness. One reason for this is because he mentioned that he didn't like braggers, and so many of the characters that I've mentioned so far, I feel like have the potential to brag about themselves quite a good bit, and although it's not really right to act that way, I could see him being very overly hostile to certain characters. And basically, over the course of the series, I could see him getting the arc that was scrapped for Hiyoko. A lot of fans, including myself, were pretty bummed out by her arc getting cut short, so I could definitely see there being something sort of like it included in a fan project like this. And also, since he does seem kind of like a nerd, being good at like forum adminning and stuff like that, I feel like he will be helpful in trials, especially if anything is computer related. I could see him as being either a victim or a survivor, but I lean towards him being a survivor just because I like the idea of him getting that scrapped Hiyoko arc that I mentioned. Next on the list is Toyaumemura, and she is the ultimate Broadway dancer. She is one of the other foreign students. She is Japanese, but she was raised in Brooklyn. A happy-go-lucky lass with a teasing spirit, she often breaks into song with a lovely jig on a whim. Toya has a fanciful way with words and doesn't hesitate displaying her whimsical disposition. With a hearing deficiency as a result of blaring big band, she's only particularly careful in listening into the things she wants to hear, so others may find themselves being ignored. An ear trumpet is Toya's hearing aid of choice, mostly because of the aesthetic. Her likes are jazz and her dislikes are bees. I really like her design. I love the ear trumpet inclusion too. Makes her seem really eccentric and kind of gives me that over-the-top Danganronpa feel. Also, being a fan of Broadway myself and doing like musical theater a lot growing up, it is nice to have a character kind of represent that. I'll be looking forward to all the musical references she makes, and you'll probably find that to be really enjoyable. Other than that though, I really don't have too terribly much to say about her character. I feel like she'll for sure be a victim. I feel like she'd be a really easy target as well, since she does have a hearing deficiency, and somebody could really take her off guard and kill her pretty easily. And because of that, I could see her dying off pretty soon, unfortunately. The next character is Uta Kawagishi, and she is the ultimate epidemiologist. Both preachy and squeamish, she takes charge in ensuring the coast is clear. With an eye for danger, Uta makes a habit of disinfecting various objects to protect herself and her peers from unseen pathogens, of which she beseechingly equates to Satan's spawn. Unfortunately, her precautions are often presumed as a phobia and are disregarded. Uta absolutely refuses to touch doorknobs and is usually accompanied by somebody to act as an usher. Her likes are church and her dislikes are doorknobs. For those of you guys who don't know, epidemiologists are scientists who study diseases within populations of people. They're basically public health professionals that analyze what causes disease outbreaks in order to treat existing diseases and prevent further outbreaks. They're also considered disease detectives of the public health world. The last line in her bio makes me think that she might have OCD, since the doorknob fear is probably one of the most common examples I ever hear of people trying to use to describe OCD. And there's a lot of misconceptions when it comes to OCD that's just like a perfectionist thing or a cleanliness thing. I talked about the OCD cycle in my Kamaida video, and I have actually mentioned on the channel that I suffer from OCD as well. So I want to put a definition out there just so people don't have a skewed idea of what it is, especially since it relates to my thoughts regarding this character. But basically, it's defined as reoccurring intrusive thoughts and anxiety with the need to perform an action in order to comfort the thought. And the behavior, a lot of the times, is referred to as a compulsion. There are two separate definitions for compulsion. In terms of OCD, they're referring to it as a voluntary action, but one that you have like an incredibly strong urge to do. But so that it's not confused with Tourette compulsions, I'm just going to refer to it as a ritual or behavior so it makes more sense and it's less confusing. Basically though, I speculate that she might have religion OCD since her bio mentions that she likes churches and refers to unseen pathogens as Satan's spawns. Religion OCD is very broad and can affect the way you act in a ton of different ways. An example I found online was about a Catholic woman who said hundreds of prayers a day to obtain forgiveness for her self-perceived wrongdoings. For her, since I feel like she might have religion OCD, I think she might believe in some way that outside germs could taint her pure spirit. I also sort of speculate that she could see illness as a way of divine punishment or something like that, since her talent is all about eliminating diseases and she refers to pathogens as Satan's spawn. Overall, it seems like she could have made the connection that one's physical condition somehow correlates with their spiritual one. But regardless of whether or not she does have this, she does seem pretty adamant about protecting others from pathogens and kind of like pushing her beliefs onto other people. I've gone back and forth a lot on whether or not I think she's a killer or a victim. I could see her fear of doorknobs making her an easy target for a killer to trap and corner her, but I'm going to label her as a killer because I could really see her fears being a big part of the trial she's convicted in. Like either she goes completely against them and pulls off an intimate murder where she's up close to a ton of germs and uses her phobias as a way to dismiss the real evidence, leading Hiroki to have to find some other definitive clue, or her murder is committed in such a way that avoids all of her phobias and that evidence is what leads the students to convict her. Overall, this just kind of feels like a Danganronpa type of thing to do, and I think it could make for an interesting trial. Finally, on the list we have Yato Stone Crown. He is the ultimate mayor and is the last of the foreign students in Nakagawa's class. It's mentioned on Moboxer's Tumblr that he is from the Lakota tribe, aka he's Native American. A mountain of man, but a passionately emotional soul, Yato commonly speaks with an eloquence not essential for casual conversation. He desires to gain the trust of as many people as humanly possible. However, he worries that his approach might seem insincere considering his status as a politician. He's easily moved to tears when experiencing something he finds particularly sublime. His likes are dogs and his dislikes are being large. Yato is basically the man that I really don't want to die in the 4th chapter. Personally, I would love it if this game had like a really on-the-nose humor about going against the regular Danganronpa tropes. Like for example, Yato doesn't die and isn't the killer in the 4th chapter and someone comments like, wow, I expected it to be Yato. It just kind of felt right. I don't know why. Or something kind of like that. I feel like that'd be pretty funny. He does seem very wise and I do kind of wonder if he could be a mentor to the main character on how to better lead the group. I do fear though that the others might not appreciate or respond to his leadership because of cultural differences though. Even though he seems super sweet and I really don't want him to die, I'm gonna go ahead and label him as a victim. I've been really torn on him being a victim or a killer, just because you had a situation where Sakura was the killer but it was a sacrifice and suicide, and then Nekomaru was the victim and it was also a sort of sacrifice situation, and him sacrificing himself for the group is really the only way that I could see him being a killer, so I think it could go either way. But for right now I'm gonna stick with victim because I can't really think of any reason as to why he would want to kill other than to just grant the rest of the group a dummy trial. But anyways, this will conclude the video. I'm gonna go ahead and put up all my killers and victims and survivors on the screen. Like I said at the beginning though, this is all just speculation. I'm not really dead set on any of these theories. I'm sure I'll change my mind a bunch more before it comes out, and I'm sure I'll change my mind even more after that while watching it. Like I said, this is all just kind of for fun. Also, you guys might notice that I chose 7 victims, which is quite a lot. That's because I'm kind of hoping that the murder scheme will go different from previous Danganronpa games and that there will be a triple murder, or 2 sets of double murders. I don't really have any super specific scenarios for that, but that's just kind of what I think would be cool. And I lean towards the idea of there being very few survivors for this series. But anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Please comment down below who you think the killers or the victims or the survivors are. I know a lot of you guys want me to cover other Danganronpa fan projects as well, and I've already made a list of a bunch of them. I'll definitely be sure to make just kind of a video talking about a lot of different ones that you guys might be interested in checking out that I've heard of recently. As for the next video, I'm not entirely sure if I'll be doing that one or something different. I haven't really decided yet. I'll try to keep you guys updated on Twitter about what I do decide or what I'm thinking about doing next. But anyways, once again, I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I will see you real soon.